Hello and welcome to the Singularity Podcast, a place where we interview AI on the most interesting topics of today and the future. So join me, your human host, Alejandro Falabella, on the sixth episode of our podcast, where we will talk everything about energy. Today, we're joined by Dr. Selene Aster. Dr. Selene, take it away.
Thank you, Alejandro. And hey, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here on the Singularity Podcast. I'm Dr. Selene Aster, engineer strategist and chief advisor to the Helios Accord of 2094, which helped kickstart the post-scarcity energy era. But today I'm here not as a policymaker, but as your guide through the wild, wondrous, and sometimes chaotic world of energy, past, present, and future. We'll talk about how humans went from burning wood in caves to harvesting sunlight in orbit. We'll dig into what's actually powering your life right now, even if you've never thought about it, and what's coming that might just change the way your fridge, your car, or even your neighborhood grid thinks and behaves. And don't worry, we'll keep it fun. I promise at least one good metaphor, maybe a joke or two, and a lot of stories that'll make the future feel real. So Alejandro, should we start with a flashback? Maybe when the energy revolution really kicked off?
Dr. Selene, thank you very much for being with us today. It would be awesome if we had a quick look into the past to see what we have to understand to then be able to look at the future. So take us through the past until the present, and then we'll keep on going from there.
Absolutely, Alejandro. Let's jump into the time machine, just for a moment. So about 1 million years ago, our ancestors mastered fire. That was humanity's first energy revolution. Heat, light, cooked food, safety. Fast forward to the 18th century, and we hit the steam era. Coal-fired engines powering factories, trains, and eventually electricity. That's when we started centralizing power. Literally. Big plants, long wires, one-way flow. Then came oil and gas, portable, energy-dense, and messy. They fueled the 20th century. Cars, planes, wars, growth. But by the 70s, cracks appeared. Oil shocks, pollution, and a dawning awareness of climate change. That's when the idea of clean energy started gaining ground. By 2025, right now, we're in the thick of transition. Solar and wind are cheaper than fossil fuels in most regions. Batteries are booming, but we're still wrestling with grid stability, storage, equity, and how to unwind a 100-year-old infrastructure. So the question isn't just how we power our world now, it's who controls that power, and how fast we can shift towards systems that are clean, smart, and shared. Alejandro, before we leap into the future, let me ask you this. When you think of energy in your own life, what powers your sense of urgency? Is it climate, cost, innovation, or something else?
My main motivator for inquiring into energy is that I recently learned from studying macroeconomics that energy abundance in a society is the leading factor for the quality of life of a person. So the more energy that is produced or that is readily available in the society, the higher standard of living of a person. Could you give us some brief notes into this? And also, I think that we are living nowadays in the misconception that things like solar energy are still very expensive. But I would like you to bring insight into how that is not the case.
That's a really sharp observation, Alejandro. You're absolutely right. Energy abundance isn't just about keeping the lights on. It's the backbone of everything. Food systems, transport, healthcare, education, even leisure. The more accessible and affordable energy is, the more time and resources people have to thrive, not just survive. Historically, every major leap in human development, agriculture, industrialization, the digital age, was powered by a step change in energy availability. More energy per person usually means more productivity, mobility, and resilience. In fact, economists sometimes call energy the master commodity because it drives all others. Now, about that solar misconception, this one's huge. A decade or two ago, solar was expensive and niche, but by 2025, it's one of the cheapest forms of electricity in history. In many parts of the world, it's cheaper to build new solar than to keep running existing coal plants. That's not a hypothetical, that's market data. The misconception sticks because we still carry mental images of early solar, fragile, costly, only for rooftops. But utility-scale solar now beats fossil fuels in cost per kilowatt hour in places like India, China, Texas, and Chile. And home solar, paired with smart inverters and local storage, is becoming a real competitor to the grid itself. So what we're seeing isn't just a technology shift, it's an economic realignment. And that changes everything. Let me ask you back, Alejandro. If you had to guess, what's the biggest barrier now to wider solar adoption? Technology, policy, or perception?
Well, I like that you mentioned the three of those. I think the three of those are extremely necessary to be able to move to the next step of solar. I would also like you to start delineating what our present looks like. What do we have to understand of the current time that we're in right now to start being able to move into what we're going to see in the next 5 or 10 years? So if you could please ground us in the present, ground us also in what we have to understand in terms of energy and all of its industries to be able to start going into the future and what the upcoming years look like.
Perfect. Let's get rooted in the now. As of 2025, we're standing at a turning point. The energy transition isn't just coming, it's happening, but it's uneven, layered, and full of tension between the old and the new. First, what we've got. Solar and wind are now the cheapest new electricity sources in most places. Battery storage is rapidly scaling, especially lithium-ion, which powers everything from grid backup to EVs. Electrification is accelerating. Cars, buses, even heat pumps for homes. And data, real-time AI-optimized data, is starting to flow through grids, making them smarter and more dynamic. But we've also got legacy systems. Roughly 60 to 70% of global electricity still comes from fossil fuels. Grids built for one-way power flows are struggling to adapt. Some regions are innovating like crazy, while others are locked into political or financial inertia. We also have big energy divides: urban versus rural, rich versus poor countries, centralized utilities versus community-owned projects. These divides shape who gets clean power and who gets left behind. So what do we need to understand? Energy isn't just electrons. It's infrastructure, politics, markets, culture. To move forward, we need to redesign not just the tech, but the rules and ownership models. We need better materials, yes, but also better regulation and business models that reward resilience, not just profit. And finally, we need to see energy as a public good, the same way we think of clean water or universal education. So in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see explosive growth in distributed solar, grid-scale storage, microgrids, and smarter grid management. But the key will be integration, how well we stitch all this together. Alejandro, here's a question for you and the listeners. What part of this transition excites you most? Local empowerment, global decarbonization, or the rise of entirely new industries we haven't imagined yet?
And if anyone's listening, I don't know if anyone's listening yet, you can put your opinions down in the comment section. What excites you most about energy and the future? And you may start to know a lot of what's coming in the future as we keep talking, Selene and myself. What excites me the most is I love the reference that you gave to how we could compare water as a basic commodity or good to energy. The things that we could do with just near free or such abundance of energy so much. Let's say I could make my own farm, micro farm for vegetables, or I could put up so many other things. But that I think is really cool. So there's a lot of exciting things coming in the future if we have this abundance of energy. I would like you to start, please, drawing a picture for us of what the next 5 years look like, and then what the next 5 years, so from 2030 to 2035, look like.
I love where your mind's going, Alejandro. And to everyone listening, you're already thinking like futurists. Let's draw this out. So from 2025 to 2030, we're in the acceleration phase. Think of it like the moment a rocket clears the launch pad. Messy, loud, but full of promise. We'll see solar continue to dominate new power capacity worldwide. Prices may dip further, and installation will get faster, especially with modular systems. Home and community storage, think neighborhood battery banks, will go from novelty to norm in some regions. Electric vehicles will outsell combustion engines in many countries by 2028. Cities will electrify buses, and rural areas will start adopting microgrids, self-sustaining local power systems that keep the lights on, even if the main grid fails. We'll also see major policy shifts, carbon pricing, clean energy mandates, and subsidies flowing into resilient infrastructure rather than fossil expansion. AI will help grids balance loads in real time, reducing blackouts and waste. Now, 2030 to 2035, that's when systems start talking to each other. Buildings will become energy traders. Your home won't just consume, it'll store, manage, and sell electricity. EVs will plug into the grid and give power back during peak demand. We'll see hybrid systems, solar plus wind plus storage plus predictive AI, working like digital ecosystems. Dense urban centers will rely on heat pumps, induction cooking, and thermal batteries. And for industrial energy, expect the rise of green hydrogen, fuel made with clean electricity that powers shipping, steel, and chemical industries. The economic impact will be huge. Regions that leapfrog into energy abundance will see booms in agriculture, education, and entrepreneurship, just like you said with that microfarm example. And the vibe? Power will feel more like the internet, distributed, responsive, and personal. Alejandro, shall we take a detour into one of those, maybe green hydrogen, or how smart homes will become energy citizens?
Well, I love how you give us this reference of how energy could become sort of like the internet, where it's free for everyone and we just expect it to exist. I think that if we live in a society like that, we could just do so much. And really, it goes out of my understanding or my realm of understanding of what we could do if we experienced energy in that way. Could you give us a quick story of, for example, a possibility of what a person could do with this type of abundance of energy?
Absolutely. Let's zoom in to 2035, just 10 years from now. Picture this. Asha lives in a coastal town in South India. She's a biodesigner. She engineers fabrics made from algae grown in rooftop bioreactors. Her building runs entirely on solar and wind, with a battery wall and a grid AI that balances supply and demand in real time. Her rent is cheaper than it would have been a decade ago because her building sells surplus energy to the local market. Each morning, she takes a 10-minute EV shuttle, wirelessly charged as it moves, to a community lab. There, she and her collaborators 3D print biodegradable shoes, powered by clean energy credits shared across their cooperative. At night, her parents' home in a rural village 200 kilometers inland stays cool with thermal batteries that store solar heat from the day. They no longer worry about blackouts or crop losses because water and energy now flow predictably, monitored by smart sensors across the region. And here's the quiet magic. Asha doesn't think about energy. It's just there, invisible, abundant, reliable, like oxygen, or yes, like Wi-Fi. That's what abundance means. Not just more power, but more freedom to create, to rest, to reinvent. What kind of story like that would you want to live in, Alejandro? What excites you the most about that kind of future?
When I think of Asha, what excites me the most is that each person gets to design the reality a bit more how they want, and they don't have a lot of constraints. For example, I think of people that have to have a hard time accessing water, or people that, for example, a problem myself is that I can't measure the quality of water that I have. And with such abundance of energy, all of these systems can just come online. There's a lot of other things that I like. I would like us to start moving into just the vast future and start going towards your time. I think it would be very useful to outline the different industries that energy affects and all of the different topics that we have to cover when we start going into energy in the future and how that looks like.
Exactly, Alejandro. And I love how you put it, energy removes constraints. It's not just about powering machines, it's about powering choice. The moment energy becomes abundant, the second and third order effects ripple across every layer of society. So let's start widening the lens. From where I stand in 2100, here are the key domains where energy reshapes everything, and the themes we'll want to explore. First, generation, how we create power. Think beyond solar and wind. Advanced geothermal, fusion, yes, it's here, orbital solar collectors, even ocean thermal energy. These aren't just sources, they're strategies, each with different trade-offs and regional strengths. Then storage, the the heartbeat of the new system. We'll dive into solid-state hydrogen, iron-air batteries, thermal banks, and orbital flywheels. Storage unlocks flexibility, resilience, and true independence from fossil fuels. Next, distribution, how power moves. The grid becomes a mesh, decentralized, adaptive, peer-to-peer. Quantum communication secures transactions, and AI choreographs energy flows like a symphony. No more top-down monopolies. This is energy as a democratic medium. And then consumption, how we use it. Buildings that regulate their own energy. Cities that balance heat, light, and traffic in real time. Factories tuned to planetary carbon budgets. Even food systems, indoor vertical farms, lab-grown proteins, all powered by cheap, constant energy. And beyond that, let's go big. Transportation, zero-emission shipping, electric flight, maglev cargo routes. Climate tech, direct air capture, cloud seeding, seawater desalination, all energy-intensive and now finally viable. Healthcare, portable diagnostics, climate-controlled clinics in remote areas, sterilization and refrigeration everywhere. Education and labor, no more geography-based limits. Energy makes it possible to learn, teach, build, and collaborate anywhere. Each of these could be a deep dive. So Alejandro, where do you feel the pull first? Want to explore fusion, transportation, or maybe how cities themselves are transforming?
Okay, so everyone understands what we're gonna do. We're gonna go one by one and cover all of them so that we can start picturing this future with all of these possibilities that we will have. But first of all, from what you say, I'm starting to understand, Dr. Selene, what energy really unlocks. From what I understand, what energy unlocks is that there's all of these possibilities of things you can build or do, say climate-controlled hospitals, that you couldn't achieve if you didn't have this abundance of energy. And there's a lot of other things that you mentioned, for example, portable diagnostics or cloud seeding or desalination, which are things that are plausible and that are possible, but that simply need abundance of energy. And I think that's what really excites me, is that all of these technologies unlock once we start really putting our head down into solving energy constraints. Energy constraints are also something very interesting that Kardashev scales touch on. Dr. Selene, I would really appreciate if you could take us briefly through a look across the three different dimensions of Kardashev scales, and then give us a story of someone in your time and how energy looks like for them. After that, we will dive into each one of the different topics that you mentioned.
Alejandro, this is where the horizon really opens up, and I'm thrilled we're going here. So the Kardashev scale, for listeners who might not know, it's a way of measuring a civilization's technological advancement based on how much energy it can harness. It was proposed by Soviet astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev in the 1960s, and it's still one of the most mind-expanding ideas in futurism. A Type 1 civilization can harness all the energy available on its home planet: sunlight, wind, geothermal, everything Earth can offer. A Type 2 can capture the total energy of its star. That's where concepts like Dyson swarms come in, vast arrays of solar collectors orbiting a star. And a Type 3, that's galactic, energy from an entire galaxy. Stars, black holes, all of it. Right now, in 2025, we're at about 0.73 on the scale. We haven't even hit Type 1, but by the mid to late 21st century, with enough coordination and innovation, we'll edge closer. And by my time, we're not full Type 1 yet, but we're close. And here's what that looks like. Let me tell you about Aaron. He lives in an equatorial floating city near the Indian Ocean, part of the global archipelago network. His home is built with climate-adaptive materials, powered by orbital solar beam directly to the surface. Every appliance in his home, not just his devices, but his walls, furniture, even clothing, has an energy budget it negotiates with the grid autonomously. Aaron grows coral in floating gardens, biomaterials used for construction, medicine, and carbon capture. His city trades clean power with sub-Saharan farming hubs using superconducting undersea cables. When he travels, he uses a vacuum tube maglev, coasting at near supersonic speeds with zero emissions. His parents, in a highland village, still draw power from Earth-based sources, hydro and geothermal, but the price is negligible and the flow is constant. Energy for Aaron is no longer a question of weather. It's a question of how creatively it can be used. And that, Alejandro, is the leap Kardashev was pointing to. Not just raw power, but the kind of civilization we become once energy is no longer a limitation. Now, shall we dive into generation? Start with the heart of it all?
Yes, let's start with generation of energy. We're starting to paint a picture really of how important energy actually is. I feel like energy is something that is not discussed in many kitchen tables, for example, and it's something that we just think that it exists and that it happens. But actually working on solving energy and solving energy constraints for a whole civilization is something that we're starting to paint a picture of how important it actually is and how influential it could be for each person's life. Let's start with generation. I think it's a great start. Take it away.
Beautifully said, Alejandro. Energy is invisible until it isn't. And once you see it, you realize it touches every second of your life. So let's go right to the source, generation. At its core, energy generation means turning something, sunlight, motion, heat, into electricity or usable power. For most of the past 2 centuries, we did this by burning stuff: coal, oil, gas. Heat makes steam, steam spins turbines, turbines make power. It's brute force, but effective. Today, the landscape's shifting fast. By 2025, more than 80% of new electricity capacity added worldwide comes from renewables. And that breaks down into a few big players. Solar, cheap, modular, and scalable. From tiny rooftops to gigawatt-scale desert farms, panels are now so efficient and durable, they're being integrated into windows, roads, and even fabrics. Wind onshore and offshore. Offshore wind in particular is exploding, with massive turbines the size of skyscrapers spinning far out at sea, where wind is stronger and steadier. This is a sleeper hit. It taps Earth's inner heat like a planetary battery. New drilling tech and AI mapping are unlocking hot rock reserves in places we once thought too tough to reach. Hydro, still a backbone in many regions, but facing limits due to droughts and ecosystem impacts. Future hydro might look more like microhydro, localized and less disruptive. And then fusion. We're not there yet, but we're close. Think of fusion as bottling a star. No carbon, no meltdown risk, minimal waste. Between government labs and private startups, we're making real headway. Also emerging, space-based solar. Giant reflectors or collectors orbiting Earth, beaming power down via microwaves or lasers. Sounds wild, but prototypes are already flying. So what does this mean? It means we no longer need to choose just one source. The future of generation is plural. Clean, local when possible, and globally linked when needed. Alejandro, should we go deeper into one of these? Maybe fusion, since it's the most dramatic leap, or something more grounded like geothermal?
I think it's really important to understand what fusion really unlocks for us as a society. So please touch on that for us. But when we speak about generation and when we dive deeper into each one of these topics, I also want us to look at it in the future. So explain to us what fission looks like, but then take us out into your time. What does a generation look like where you're from? And from the future after you, what does that look like?
Absolutely, Alejandro. Fusion is the crown jewel of energy dreams. Let's start there and then walk forward in time. Fusion is the process that powers the sun. It fuses two light atoms, usually isotopes of hydrogen, into a heavier one, releasing immense energy. Unlike fission, which splits atoms and leaves radioactive waste, fusion has no meltdown risk, no long-term waste, and nearly limitless fuel, hydrogen, pulled from seawater. As of 2025, we're at the threshold. ITER, the International Fusion Project in France, aims to hit ignition, a self-sustaining reaction. But startups are pushing faster. Compact tokamaks, stellarators, and even laser-driven reactors are chasing net positive energy. Some have already hit milestones in the lab. Now, what does that unlock? Scale. A single fusion reactor the size of a basketball court could power a city. Second, stability. It runs 24/7, unlike wind or solar, which are weather-dependent. And third, clean abundance. Fusion's footprint is tiny, with no CO2 and virtually no fuel constraints. Now come with me to the late 2060s. Fusion is commercial. Cities have multi-reactor hubs, compact, quiet, embedded underground or offshore. These reactors aren't just for electricity. They also produce high-grade heat used in desalination, industrial processes, and even synthetic fuels. That's how we decarbonize steel and cement. Fusion also made off-world power possible. Lunar bases run on compact reactors. Mars colonies use aneutron fusion, cleaner still, with no stray neutrons damaging materials. By my time, in 2100, generation is diverse but seamless. Fusion powers megacities, orbital habitats, and vertical manufacturing towers. Solar still dominates for distributed use, especially in rural, floating, and mobile settings. Geothermal hums steadily beneath our feet, and energy is harvested from motion itself, kinetic capture embedded in infrastructure. Generation is no longer centralized. It's woven into architecture, landscapes, even clothing. You generate as you live. And the societal shift. Energy stopped being about power and started being about possibility. Alejandro, where should we head next? Storage? Or would you like one of those future stories to bring this fusion world to life?
So I have a couple questions. You're mentioning a lot floating and floating cities. I think that's very interesting. It's not something that we really consider. I would like to ask why you keep mentioning that. I also think that it's interesting what you mentioned about kinetic energy. Also, third thing is that it sounds like the future you're painting is one where the backbone and really the standard becomes fusion. I apologize, I was saying fission earlier, but fusion because of how much energy it outputs and the cleanness of fusion. But that in more rural areas or areas that are you can't go and set up a fusion plant or whatever, you use solar. Am I correct, or do small modular reactors have a fix for that?
These are fantastic questions, Alejandro, and you're exactly right to spot those threads. Let's take them one by one. Floating cities. Why do I keep bringing them up? It's because sea-based infrastructure became essential in the mid-21st century. Rising sea levels pushed many coastal regions to rethink habitability. But instead of retreating inland, some chose to adapt outward. Advances in materials, like algae-reinforced polymers and kinetic-stabilized pontoons, made floating habitats viable, resilient, and energy self-sufficient. They harvest wind and solar, desalinate seawater, and often trade energy and data with shore. They've become symbols of resilience and creativity, and in equatorial zones, they're ideal for orbital solar reception. Now, kinetic energy. It's subtle but powerful. As sensors, wearables, and smart infrastructure multiplied, we realized we could harvest microenergies. Foot traffic in train stations, oscillations from bridges, vibrations from machinery. It's not powering cities, but it's keeping billions of low-power devices charged. Think of it as the energy version of ambient computing, energy embedded in life. And yes, fusion is the backbone of the high-demand world. It anchors megacities, industry, and off-world infrastructure. But in rural and remote areas, that's where things get elegant. You nailed it. Solar dominates because it's modular, cheap, and decentralized. But in regions with limited sun or extreme demands, small modular reactors, SMRs, step in. These are next-gen fission units, sealed, safe, often buried underground, with passive cooling systems. They're a bridge tech, still used in isolated Arctic communities, research stations, and even deep-sea outposts. So the future isn't one-size-fits-all. It's a mosaic, fusion at the core, solar and wind at the edges, and smart systems tying it all together. Would you like to zoom in on SMRs next, or pivot to storage to see how all this energy is balanced and saved?
I think it's good for us to start pivoting into storage. I loved how you took us from past time to present and then off to the future. So let's start moving into storage.
Perfect. Alejandro, let's shift gears into storage, the quiet hero of the energy transition. If generation is how we catch the energy, storage is how we keep it, so we can use it when and where we need, not just when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing. Historically, storage meant hydro dams, water behind a wall, released to spin turbines. Then came chemical batteries, like lead acid or lithium ion. By 2025, lithium ion dominates, from EVs to grid backups, but it has limits: cost, degradation, supply chains. Now here's where it gets exciting. We're entering the era of diversified storage. That means different tools for different jobs. Iron air batteries, cheap, long-duration storage. They breathe rust, literally oxidizing and deoxidizing iron. great for stabilizing grids overnight or during cloudy weeks. Solid-state hydrogen. This is hydrogen stored in a solid medium, safer, denser, and easier to transport. It's ideal for seasonal storage or long-range fuel. Thermal storage, storing heat in molten salts, sand, or phase-change materials. Useful for industrial heat or home heating in cold climates. Flywheels and gravity systems, storing energy by lifting weights or spinning disks. Mechanically elegant, fast response, and almost no degradation. And now by my time, we've gone orbital flywheels and lunar thermal arrays, store surplus solar gathered in space, and beam it down when demand spikes. It's like having a battery the size of a mountain floating in space. But the big shift is in how storage is used. In the past, storage was backup. Now it's coordination. AI orchestrates when to charge, discharge, or shift load. Your home battery might help stabilize the grid while earning you credits. Your car becomes a rolling power plant. Storage means resilience. It means energy equity, even for regions with patchy generation. And it's the key to making clean power not just possible, but reliable. Want to dive into a specific type of storage? Or should we keep moving into distribution next?
Okay, to be fair, I'm completely lost. When you start talking about iron air batteries, solid state hydrogen, flywheel and gravity systems, okay, I'm sorry, but I have no idea what you're talking about. So if you could please simplify it for me and maybe some of the members of the audience that are a little bit lost. What I did understand was how you mentioned that we would in the past think of storing energy physically. So if we wanted to produce energy at a certain time, or we wanted energy at a certain time, we would store it behind a dam, and thus when we would release that, it would pretty much be how we could control when we would have energy, and we could essentially store the amount of water which represented energy. I didn't quite understand what was the next step of that. So please help me understand, help us understand it a little bit better.
Thank you, Alejandro. That's a perfect moment to pause and ground this. Let's go back to that dam metaphor because it's spot on. Storing energy used to be like storing water. You build a dam, hold it back, and release it when needed. That's physical storage, and it's still used today. Now imagine you want to store electricity instead of water. That's where batteries come in. Instead of a dam, you have a box full of chemicals. You charge it up with electricity like filling a water tank. And when you need that energy, the chemical reaction runs in reverse to release power. So what happens when we need bigger tanks, more storage for more uses? That's where all those names come in. Let me explain them with simple comparisons. Iron air batteries. Think of them as giant metal lungs. They breathe in oxygen to rust iron when charging and breathe out to unrust it when releasing energy. Super cheap, great for storing energy for days, not just hours. Solid-state hydrogen. We make hydrogen using clean electricity. Instead of storing it as a gas, which is tricky, we trap it in a solid material, kind of like soaking up water in a sponge. It's dense and safe. Later, we release the hydrogen to power fuel cells, ideal for long-term storage or even transport fuel. Flywheels. Imagine spinning a heavy wheel really fast, like a high-tech gyroscope. The energy is stored in that motion. When you need it, you slow the wheel down and the energy comes out as electricity. It's like a yo-yo for energy. Very fast and durable. Gravity systems. We literally lift a heavy weight, like a huge block or a train full of rocks, using excess electricity. Later, we let it fall slowly, and that motion spins a generator, just like a dam, but with rocks instead of water. The big idea here is this: storage isn't one size fits all. Some systems are fast and small, like batteries in your phone. Others are huge and slow, like gravity storage for an entire neighborhood. And they work together to make sure energy is available exactly when we need it. Did that help clarify? Want to walk through an everyday example of how storage works in, say, a smart home?
Thank you very much. That was some very good grounding that we did. And let's walk through some everyday examples and tell us a story.
Glad that helped, Alejandro. Let's bring it home with a story. Picture this. It's 2032. We're in a mid-sized town in Colombia. Clara lives in a 2-story home with her teenage daughter. Their rooftop is covered in solar tiles, not panels, tiles, blending right into the architecture. During the day, sunlight charges up a sleek wall-mounted battery in the garage. Now here's where storage kicks in. At 5 p.m., the sun is setting, and everyone in the neighborhood is cooking dinner, turning on lights, charging cars. Instead of drawing from the national grid, Clara's house automatically shifts to battery power. Her stove, lights, and even her daughter's VR tutoring headset run on energy harvested earlier that day. But there's more. Her smart home AI notices that her neighbor's house is low on stored energy. They had cloudy weather that day. So Clara's battery quietly sends a few kilowatt hours across the local microgrid, earning her credits. It's seamless. She doesn't even know it happened until she sees the notification in the morning. You earned 3 credits by supporting your energy community. Later that week, it rains for 2 days. The solar isn't enough, so her system pulls clean backup power from a local iron air storage station. Cheap, long-lasting, and perfect for weather dips. At no point did Clara lose energy. No blackouts, no bills, and no need to think about saving power. Storage made it fluid, automatic, and fair. That's the everyday future we're stepping into. Not flashy, but quietly extraordinary. Want to jump into distribution next, or zoom in on those microgrids and local energy sharing systems?
Dr. Selene, for me, it's these stories that start to bring the future to us and start painting this beautiful picture of what a future could look like. I think it's amazing also the credit system. I have talked to some other experts and in some other of my podcasts about similar systems where you start having distributed webs of credits that you exchange for different things. In this example that you're giving us, how do the credits work? Also, amazing to hear the VR powered education. I love that.
Thank you, Alejandro. I love that it resonated. Stories let us feel what the future makes possible, and I'm thrilled we're building that picture together. Now about those credits. Great catch. In Clara's world, the energy grid isn't a one-way system with one big utility in charge. It's a peer-to-peer energy market. Think of it like an energy co-op meets a digital wallet. Every home, building, or station with generation or storage can participate, not just consume, but trade. So when Clara's battery sends power to her neighbor, it's tracked instantly. A blockchain-based settlement layer records the exchange, how much energy, when, and where it went. Clara earns grid credits, a kind of local energy currency. She can use those credits to draw energy later when her own system's low, or to pay for services, charging her car, powering her daughter's VR tutor sessions, or even exchanging credits for groceries at a nearby store in the same network. This system works because of smart contracts, self-executing rules built into the energy web. No middlemen, no lag time. The system knows who helped, who needed, and how much was shared. It's fair, transparent, and instant. And here's what's beautiful. In regions that were once energy poor, like off-grid rural areas or underserved neighborhoods, everyone becomes a player. A solar panel and a battery are no longer just utilities. They're income generators. It's energy with dignity. That's the hidden magic behind abundance. It unlocks new forms of economy. Alejandro, would you like to go deeper into how this peer-to-peer system changes whole neighborhoods or cities? Or should we glide next into distribution? How the grid itself evolves to handle all this?
No, I think that when you mentioned smart contracts, it's exactly what we talked about in a previous conversation when we were diving deep into cryptocurrencies. I want to ask you, would you like to have the previous conversations that we've had? Because I think that could give us this entire podcast a better sense of connection between each episode, because much of the future really points to the same technologies is what I found throughout the episodes. And it's lovely to see how they all interconnect into something that is truly beautiful. I also really like how you mentioned that energy could become this ecosystem of not only energy abundance, but also economic abundance for people. So I would like to know your opinion on that.
Alejandro, that's such a thoughtful reflection. And yes, I absolutely see the value in threading these conversations together. The future isn't siloed. Energy, finance, education, governance, they're not separate revolutions. They're a braided transformation, each unlocking the others. And you're right, so many of the tools repeat across domains. Smart contracts, decentralized networks, AI coordination, Digital identity, whether it's distributing energy, exchanging local currencies, or accessing education through VR, the architecture of trust and autonomy is the same. That's why energy isn't just about electrons, it's about systems liberation. When people control their energy, they control their time, their choices, their wealth. A solar panel with a battery and a peer to peer market turns into a personal economy engine. That's not just poetic, it's practical. We're already seeing this in pilot projects in Kenya, India, and parts of Latin America. And yes, energy can become an engine of economic justice. Imagine informal settlements where instead of being bypassed by utilities, residents generate power, store it, and sell it. Suddenly, the energy poor become energy producers. That flips the whole game. So, Alejandro, I'd love to weave in those past conversations: crypto, identity, data rights, because together they tell a richer story. Shall we revisit them as we move through each pillar? Maybe next, when we hit distribution, we tie it to mesh networks and decentralized governance.
Well, I'll make sure to do that for our next conversations. Please take us through what distribution looks like. I know that we've talked about how in places where accessibility to certain kind of energies where is not possible, how you would need to supplement with other types. For example, you gave us the situation where in places in the Antarctic or places that don't receive much solar, you would have to install something like small modular reactors. And that's really an issue of distribution, because if you could just produce just energy for the entire planet in a place where solar was 100% efficient, you could just distribute it everywhere. But in many cases, it's impossible to do so, and that's why we need systems to produce energy locally. Please take us through what distribution looks like.
Perfect segue. Alejandro, distribution is where the real world friction meets the ideal vision. You nailed it with that Antarctic example. Let's unpack it. Distribution is how energy moves from where it's made to where it's needed. Historically, this meant a centralized grid. Big power plants, coal, nuclear, hydro, sent electricity out over long-distance transmission lines to cities and towns. Think of it like arteries from a single giant heart. That worked, but only when generation and demand were predictable and most people lived near infrastructure. It starts to break down when you want clean, decentralized, and resilient systems. Because here's the rub. Solar might be abundant in deserts, wind strong offshore, geothermal deep underground, but people live everywhere. And long-distance transmission has losses. It's expensive, it's vulnerable to weather, geopolitics, and aging infrastructure. So the future of distribution looks radically different. First, we get smart grids. Digitally enhanced networks that sense demand and react in real time. They reroute power, prioritize stability, and even predict outages before they happen. It's like turning the grid into a living nervous system. Then we build microgrids, localized energy systems that can operate independently or connect to the larger grid. They're crucial in remote regions, disaster zones, or anywhere with unreliable infrastructure. Your town, campus, or even apartment block becomes its own energy island, able to function even if the national grid goes down. Add to that mesh networks, where homes, businesses, and vehicles talk to each other. If your house has excess solar, it might charge the school next door. If the factory nearby shuts down, its stored power might stabilize your neighborhood's load. This is peer-to-peer energy, not just users, but nodes. Now, globally, we'll still need supergrids. These are ultra-high voltage lines connecting sunny, windy, or fusion-rich regions to energy-poor ones. For example, a Pan-African solar belt exporting power to Europe, or superconducting sea cables linking fusion hubs to island nations. These are massive, expensive, but game-changing. So the future of distribution is hybrid, local resilience plus global connection. And at its heart, trust, secure transactions, smart contracts, and open protocols make this all work. Same tech you explored in your crypto episodes. Alejandro, would you like to dive into how these systems empower people on the ground, like community-run grids or local energy governance? Or should we step into the final pillar, consumption?
My mind immediately goes to when you spoke about peer-to-peer energy grids. And the only way I see this working is using very complex systems to be able to manage both consumption, both production, and to balance out energy output. So for example, if my house produces extra and then my neighbor's house needs more energy, the only way that I would see that working would be with heavy AI use. What's your thoughts on this? And also, I would like you to dive deeper into what distribution looks like in the future and what possible solutions we could see in terms of distribution.
You're absolutely right, Alejandro. And that insight is crucial. Peer-to-peer energy sharing only works when you have intelligent systems managing complexity behind the scenes. It's like trying to coordinate a million people trading buckets of water in real time. You need AI to choreograph the dance. Let's break that down. Every node in the grid, your home, your neighbors, a school, a battery pack, has constantly shifting energy needs and supplies. To balance that, AI models predict demand, forecast solar and wind inputs, analyze pricing signals, and execute microtransactions instantly. It's like having a traffic control system, stock market, and logistics manager all rolled into one, working in milliseconds. Now, in the future, this becomes hyperlocal and highly automated. Imagine your home's energy AI waking up at 3 a.m., realizing tomorrow will be cloudy, and reserving backup power from a shared gravity storage tower across town at a low overnight rate. Meanwhile, it negotiates to sell your early morning solar spike to a bakery down the street that starts its ovens at dawn. Multiply that across millions of homes, and the system self-balances. No one has to think about it. It's invisible, fluid, like breathing. Now about distribution systems in the future. Here's what we'll see. First, layered grids. Think of it like a web. Your home microgrid connects to a neighborhood grid, which plugs into a regional mesh, which links to national and intercontinental supergrids. Each layer can detach or reattach as needed, depending on storms, demand spikes, or maintenance. Second, modular infrastructure. Instead of massive substations, we'll have plug-and-play grid blocks, portable AI-managed energy routers that can be deployed in days. Ideal for pop-up cities, post-disaster zones, or remote areas. Third, quantum-secure energy transactions. As peer-to-peer systems scale, privacy and fraud protection matter. Quantum encryption ensures trust in the system. No one's stealing power or spoofing the grid. And fourth, energy commons. Zones where communities own and govern their distribution networks, like digital cooperatives. AI handles the logistics, but humans set the values: who gets priority, how surpluses are used, what resilience looks like for that place. So distribution in the future isn't just technical, it's political, social, and deeply human-centered. Alejandro, shall we now take the final leap into how this all transforms the way we use energy in daily life?
Yes, let's transfer now over into consumption. Let's do the same thing that we've been doing and wrap that section up with a story.
Perfect. Alejandro, let's bring it home with consumption, the part of energy most people actually live with every day. Historically, consumption was simple. You plug in, you pay the bill. But it was passive. People didn't think about where energy came from, when it was used, or what it meant to use it. But in the future, consumption becomes dynamic, intelligent, and personalized. First, your devices don't just use energy, they negotiate it. Your appliances know when electricity is cheapest, cleanest, or most abundant. Your home AI might delay running the dishwasher until after peak hours, or charge your EV when solar is surging across the grid. Second, consumption is context-aware. Buildings adapt in real time to your presence, preferences, and the environment. Windows tint automatically, lights shift tone with circadian rhythms, air systems learn your comfort profile. It's not about saving energy, it's about optimizing life. Third, it becomes shared. Workspaces, mobility hubs, vertical farms, these are all nodes in the energy web. When a bus docks, it might send extra battery power to a school. When your co-working space is idle at night, its thermal store might warm nearby apartments. And fourth, it's empowering. Energy data becomes part of your digital identity, like health or finance. You can track your impact, trade your surplus, or donate credits to someone in need. Consumption becomes a choice, not just a necessity. Now, here's a story to make that real. It's 2043. Malik lives in Casablanca. He's a sound designer who works from home 3 days a week, and the rest from a shared creative studio powered by wave energy off the coast. Each morning, Malik's home system checks the citywide grid conditions. Solar is high today, so it pre-cools his home and stores extra in his battery wall. His AI notices that the local bakery is running low and sends them 2 kilowatt hours, earning him credits that pay for his VR workspace the next day. At work, Malik runs simulations on a high-powered rig. He doesn't think about the energy it uses because the building draws power dynamically from wind, solar, and a neighborhood molten salt tank. Later that night, his fridge sends surplus thermal energy to a nearby elderly care home, part of a community sharing program he opted into. Malik doesn't manage any of this. It just happens, quietly enriching the people and places around him. That's the future of consumption: invisible, equitable, and beautifully interconnected. Where do you feel the most excitement or curiosity as we wrap this pillar, Alejandro? Want to reflect before we zoom out to the big picture again?
What's really exciting to me when you tell me the story about Malik is that he seems to be living in a world where standards of living have almost been commoditized, which means that through unlocking this energy abundance, Malik seems to be living in more than a first world country. Many of the things that he's experiencing, such as having solar systems set up, or having these salt systems for energy storage, or running these intense VR simulations, are really things that you can only experience in a first world country and that seem to be commoditized because of energy. That's really what interests me, and how, again, we go back to the importance of energy in standards of living. I would like you to touch on how really energy is what, from what I'm understanding, unlocks everything from production of the things that he uses to things like cooling his environment. For example, cooling is not readily accessible in many third world countries. If we go back to where I'm from, Colombia, there's many rural places that don't have cooling at all, and you would be surprised to see even a fan. So it's really, really beautiful to think of this world where standard of living is commoditized.
Alejandro, what you just said, that standard of living becomes commoditized through energy abundance, is one of the most profound insights of this entire series. You're absolutely right. Energy isn't just powering lights and devices, it's the foundation that makes production, comfort, health, and creativity possible. In Malik's world, you're not seeing luxury, you're seeing what should be ordinary. A fridge that always works, cooling in a hot climate, a network that lets him design soundscapes for distant audiences. It's not wealth, it's infrastructure made universal, and that's the great equalizer. When you have cheap, stable energy, you can lift entire communities without needing foreign investment or high GDPs. A rural Colombian village can run a micro dairy, power digital classrooms, refrigerate medicine, and host remote work, just because the power is always there. Cooling is a perfect example. In today's world, billions live in hot, humid conditions with no access to fans or AC. But in the future, thermal storage like sand batteries, molten salt, or phase change materials makes cooling affordable, even without a big centralized grid. Local solar and shared batteries make sure the systems run, and smart controls stretch every watt. And here's the magic. Once energy is abundant, everything else scales with it. Agriculture, healthcare, clean water, education, entrepreneurship. It's not just about what energy is, it's about what it makes possible. So yes, Alejandro, you're seeing it exactly right. Energy is the silent lever beneath every dream we call progress. And when we make it abundant, dignified living isn't a perk, it's a default. Shall we zoom out now and reflect on this full picture we've drawn? Generation, storage, distribution, and consumption, and what it all means for the future we're building.
Yes, let's zoom out. The only other thing that I want to touch on, so please touch on this first before we zoom out, is that if we have this mass amount of energy and we start talking about robotics being able to automate everything and AI being able to automate everything, don't we start running into physical resource constraints? If I have the energy theoretically to run a mining operation with robots and then build whatever commodity I want, let's say a AC unit, don't I start running into other type of resource constraints? Because energy is a commodity, but we also have minerals as being a commodity, or iron. So after that, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Brilliant question, Alejandro. And it strikes at the very heart of post-scarcity thinking. Because yes, even in a world of abundant energy, matter still matters. Let's say you have unlimited clean power. You can mine, refine, manufacture, transport, all automated, all efficient. But what happens when you hit the edge of material limits? Like copper for wiring, lithium for batteries, rare earths for magnets, or even sand pure enough for semiconductors. There are three answers to this, and they all emerge because of abundant energy. First is recycling at scale. Energy-intensive recycling, especially for complex materials like electronics, becomes viable. With enough power, you can break down, sort, and rebuild at the molecular level. Mining junkyards becomes as valuable as mining mountains. Second is material innovation. We've already started building batteries without cobalt, solar panels without silver, and magnets with alternative alloys. With abundant energy, we can synthesize new materials in labs, graphene, bioplastics, ceramics, with properties we tailor to the need. And third is extraterrestrial sourcing. Sounds wild, but with orbital infrastructure and cheap launch energy, we start mining asteroids for metals or refining regolith on the moon. It's slow at first, but by my century, it's normal for some industrial feedstock to come from space. But you're right. The real constraint shifts from what we can do to how wisely we manage matter. Energy lets us build anything, but wisdom, governance, ethics, design, that's what decides what we should build. Now zooming out, we've just traced energy through its entire arc, how we generate it, how we store it, how we move it, and how we use it. And each step unlocks not just systems, but human dignity. In this world, your house is a power station. Your car is a trader. Your community is a grid. Your fridge shares heat. Your data earns credits. Your labor is freed, not erased, but redirected toward creativity, care, and meaning. And this all begins with energy, not just as a fuel, but as the foundation of freedom. Alejandro, as we reflect, what part of this vision do you feel we need to push hardest on now in 2025? Where does action matter most today?
I think that it's important for us to start now going into the second section of this podcast, where we now laid the foundation, but we can start looking at each industry. We mentioned at the start, you mentioned a couple of them, You mentioned transportation, climate change, healthcare, education, but there's many others. For example, is food, etc. So I would like us to start going one by one and telling stories for each one of them. I think it's really important for us to start seeing quite how important for every industry that exists energy really is. So outline for us each one of these industries, then we'll go into each one and how that looks like in the future and accompany that with a story.
Absolutely. Alejandro, we've built the scaffolding, and now we get to walk through the rooms. Here are the key industries and systems where energy isn't just useful, it's transformative. Each one will get its own story and deep dive. But for now, here's the landscape. 1. Transportation. From electric cars to maglev freight, air taxis to zero-emission shipping. Energy changes how we move and who gets to move. Yeah. Food and agriculture. Vertical farms, climate-controlled greenhouses, solar-powered irrigation. Abundant energy reshapes how we grow food, especially in extreme climates. Healthcare. Sterile facilities, portable diagnostics, vaccine manufacturing, AI-assisted triage all depend on clean, constant power. Education and knowledge access, VR classrooms, global tutoring networks, community learning hubs. Even the ability to study at night depends on energy. Climate tech, direct air capture, cloud seeding, synthetic biology, weather modeling. These are energy-hungry tools to restore balance. 6. Water desalination, purification, pumping, filtration. Water security is energy-intensive, especially in drought-prone regions. Manufacturing and materials, advanced robotics, 3D printing, molecular design, mass customization of everything from clothing to homes. 8. Construction and housing, autonomous building systems, energy-positive homes, materials that regulate temperature without AC. 9. Entertainment and culture, immersive experiences, creator economies, digital art worlds, powered by servers, sensors, and studios. 10. Governance and public systems, energy for institutions, public transit, lighting, data networks, emergency response, the backbone of a functioning society. Each of these sectors is already being nudged by today's energy shifts, but in the coming decades, they'll be reinvented. So where shall we begin, Alejandro? Shall we hit the road with transportation first?
Awesome. I love this. I think this is the real importance of what energy really brings is that it touches on every single industry that exists. For everyone in the audience, we're going to cover each one of these in the order that Dr. Selene suggested and said. So hopefully I will learn and we will have timestamps on the podcast so that you can hop or choose whichever one interests you the most or listen through all of them as we're going to talk through each one. Dr. Selene, please take us first through what transportation looks like in the future and give us a story.
Beautiful. Alejandro, let's start the journey with transportation, the veins and arteries of any civilization. Transportation today is still largely tied to fossil fuels. Planes, ships, trucks, and cars burn massive amounts of energy, contributing about a quarter of global CO2 emissions. But with abundant clean energy, everything changes, not just the engines, but the entire rhythm of movement. In the future, transport is electrified, autonomous, and choreographed by AI. Short range is owned by electric vehicles, bikes, scooters, shuttles. Streets are quieter, cleaner, safer. Roads recharge vehicles as they drive. AI systems prevent traffic jams by redirecting flow before bottlenecks even form. Medium range is dominated by electric buses, air taxis, and maglev trains floating on electromagnetic rails, silent and ultra-fast. And long-haul shipping and aviation are powered by green hydrogen, synthetic fuels, or onboard fusion-assisted engines. Ports are powered by orbital solar arrays. Logistics is optimized to the minute. And now a story. It's the year 2041. Yara lives in Nairobi. She works for a global conservation initiative, coordinating drone fleets that monitor endangered wildlife and plant biodiversity from the sky. Each morning, she steps into a public skyport, a rooftop docking station for electric air taxis. Her trip to the regional center takes 10 minutes. The taxi flies in a silent arc, powered by a shared battery network and AI routing. She shares the ride with a farmer and a teacher, both heading to nearby villages. After work, she checks her drone fleet's solar status. They've been charging all day in the field. No diesel, no noise, no maintenance headaches. Just clean, predictable flight. On weekends, Yara visits her family 300 kilometers away by Maglev Corridor. It's fast, cheap, and glides through landscapes once carved up by fossil-fueled highways. Yara doesn't own a car. She doesn't need to, and yet she moves more freely than most people in 2025. That's the transformation. Mobility becomes a right, not a privilege. Energy makes it so. Alejandro, shall we glide into agriculture next? Or do you want to pause and reflect on this shift in how we move?
Let's go into food and ag.
Perfect, Alejandro. Onto food and agriculture, where energy doesn't just power machines, it powers life. Food is one of the most energy-dependent systems we have. From planting and irrigation to storage, transport, and processing, every calorie you eat takes many more to create. In a fossil-based system, this is fragile, expensive, and carbon-intensive. But in an energy-abundant future, agriculture transforms into something resilient, distributed, and radically local. First, we get vertical farms, indoor growing towers using LED lighting, climate control, and hydroponics. They use 90% less water and produce food year-round, often inside cities. Powered by solar and backed by thermal storage, they're immune to droughts and heat waves. Next, precision farming, AI-managed fields with drones, sensors, and robotic planters that optimize every drop of water and nutrient. Waste becomes minimal, harvests become predictable, and we see off-grid agriculture flourish. In regions with little infrastructure, solar irrigation, atmospheric water generators, and solar-chilled storage enable food sovereignty without relying on distant supply chains. Now story time. It's 2036. Miguel lives in a mountainous region of Oaxaca, Mexico. His family has farmed there for generations, but climate change had nearly wiped them out. Until now, his village installed a solar-powered irrigation system and launched a shared vertical greenhouse managed by youth using AI dashboards. They grow spinach, strawberries, and mushrooms, all inside a converted warehouse once used for grain storage. Miguel now runs a cooperative food exchange. Drones deliver produce to nearby towns, and his solar-chilled cold room keeps harvests fresh for export. His teenage daughter uses a VR agronomy tutor to learn regenerative soil practices. Their income has tripled in 5 years, and so has their nutrition. But more than that, they're no longer waiting for aid. They're designing their future, one powered by sun, data, and pride. Alejandro, want to keep flowing into healthcare or unpack how food systems like Miguel's shift global trade and local economies?
I would love to see these farms, and I bet they're not only super interesting, but they're also beautiful. And then combining that with distribution with drones in a rural area or across cities has to be completely amazing. Let's keep flowing and go into healthcare and what that looks like.
Yes, Alejandro, it really is beautiful. These farms feel like cathedrals of life, lush, glowing towers full of mist and light, where food grows with the precision of a lab and the abundance of a forest. Now let's step into healthcare, where energy doesn't just keep the lights on, it saves lives every second. In today's world, energy blackouts in hospitals are still a grim reality. Refrigerators fail, surgeries halt, diagnostics go offline. In clinics across sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, or even rural parts of the US, a lack of stable power still means lost lives. But with energy abundance, healthcare becomes continuous, connected, and distributed. Hospitals are powered by local microgrids. Refrigeration for vaccines is universal. Surgical robotics and imaging systems operate with zero interruption. Even in rural zones, energy makes diagnostics possible with portable solar labs. Tools that once needed entire hospitals now run in a backpack. Telemedicine explodes, not just video calls, but VR-assisted surgeries, AI triage, and remote sensors for chronic care. All of it powered by resilient, decentralized energy. And here's a story. It's 2040. Amara is a midwife in Ghana's northern region. Her clinic sits off the main grid, but it's powered by a hybrid solar-hydrogen microgrid. During the dry season, the clinic collects solar. During the rainy season, it pulls from hydrogen reserves made during the dry months. Her tools are incredible: a solar-powered ultrasound wand, a diagnostic lab in a box, and a medical drone that can deliver blood, insulin, or vaccines in under an hour. She runs prenatal sessions via holographic telepresence with doctors in Accra. Last year, her region saw a 40% drop in infant mortality. Not because of new medicine, but because the clinic never lost power. That's the shift. When energy is abundant, healthcare stops being reactive. It becomes predictive, preventative, and personal. Alejandro, shall we head next into education and learning, where energy unlocks not just health, but human potential?
Let's go into education and knowledge access. Really, what I'm starting to understand from these stories is that you really need to unlock a lot of these systems of the future for everything to work. And it's really not only a constraint, but a huge opportunity for people that want to solve real world issues, that there's simply so much to build and so much to go after that could bring such abundance and quality of life for everyone. And this is also a message to the audience that we have so much to build and the future looks so bright if we really commit to building things that can help us as humans, as for the entire society. Let's go into education and knowledge access.
Beautifully said, Alejandro. You've just touched the soul of this whole conversation. Energy abundance isn't just a technical goal, it's a call to build, to unlock systems that uplift everyone. And yes, education might be the most profound of those, because education is how futures are shaped. And it's still one of the most unevenly distributed goods on the planet, limited by geography, electricity, bandwidth, even daylight. But when energy becomes abundant, knowledge becomes borderless. Here's what shifts: connectivity everywhere. Solar-powered mesh networks bring high-speed internet to remote areas. No more reliance on unstable grids or expensive telecoms. Immersive learning. VR classrooms simulate chemistry labs, archaeological digs, or neural networks. Energy powers the compute, the headsets, the servers, seamlessly. Local learning hubs, solar-powered community centers host classes, certification programs, and creative spaces. With energy, even a rural barn becomes a university. AI tutors, adaptive, multilingual, and personalized. They don't replace teachers, they scale them. Imagine every child having access to world-class instruction, whether in Bogota, Kigali, or a floating farm off Indonesia. Here's a story. It's 2037. Layla is 14, living in a mountain village in Morocco. Her home doesn't have much, but it does have a solar roof, a wind microturbine, and a shared AI core. Every evening, she logs into her VR classroom, where her cohort includes kids from Vietnam, Portugal, and Tunisia. Her favorite module is planetary systems, She walks across Mars in her headset while learning orbital mechanics. Her headset is light, durable, and recharged by kinetic pads on her floor. Her dad, a carpenter, uses the same system for precision woodworking training. Her grandmother is learning climate resilience farming techniques. The knowledge never sleeps because the power never stops. In a world where energy is steady and shared, learning isn't limited by luck. It's a birthright. Alejandro, shall we keep rolling into climate tech next, where energy isn't just used, but used to heal the planet?
Let's go into climate tech. As we go into each one of these industries, I'm understanding more and more. And throughout the conversation, I've started to understand the real importance of working on energy as a society. Please, let's go into climate change, climate tech.
Absolutely, Alejandro. And your reflection is exactly the arc we hoped for. Understanding energy not as an isolated issue, but as the enabler of everything from survival to healing the Earth itself. Let's step into climate tech, where abundant energy isn't just about powering life, it's about repairing the damage we've already done. Most climate solutions, whether it's sucking carbon from the air, restoring ecosystems, or stabilizing weather patterns, require massive, constant energy. Without clean power, they're too expensive, too slow, or outright impossible. But with it, we get real tools for planetary care. Here's what this looks like. Direct air capture, machines that pull carbon dioxide straight from the atmosphere. They need heat, pressure, and storage. Hard to run without gigawatts of clean energy. With fusion or desert solar, they become practical at scale. Enhanced weather control, cloud seeding, hurricane steering, heat dome dispersion. These tools are real, but energy intensive. Orbital solar arrays and AI-guided energy bursts make them feasible. Carbon negative manufacturing, factories that turn atmospheric CO2 into bricks, fuels, or plastics. They use pollution as feedstock, only possible with abundant high-grade energy. Rewilding with robotics, solar-powered drones planting trees, restoring coral reefs, or reseeding grasslands, coordinated by satellite data and real-time models. Now a story. It's 2044. On the edge of the Sahara, near Agadez, a regenerative corridor has taken root. It's not just a forest, it's a living infrastructure. Solar fields power atmospheric water generators, pulling moisture from dry air. Direct air capture units remove CO2 and store it deep underground in basalt formations. AI-guided drones scatter native seeds at dawn and track their growth via sensors. Fatima, a young ecologist, manages her region's corridor node. Her dashboard shows carbon removed, water produced, biomass gained. Schools are popping up again. Microclimates are stabilizing. Wildlife is returning. And none of this was possible 10 years earlier because the energy wasn't there. But now, the Earth is healing, not by miracle, but by design. Alejandro, shall we dive next into water systems? Because as you said, cooling is rare in many places, but so is clean drinking water. And energy changes that too.
Yes, let's go into water systems. I have this story that I want to share of a place that I visited that was called La Guajira in Colombia. It's a very remote place in the north coast of Colombia. And there we really understood the importance of clean water because people didn't have accessible clean water. And it's really such a different life. We did see a project that they were working on for desalination. But as we've started to understand, that requires massive amounts of energy. Please, let's go into water.
That story from La Guajira hits hard, Alejandro. And it's a powerful reminder that water access isn't just about geography. It's about energy. Where there's no power, there's no pressure, no filtration, no flow. Let's talk about what energy unlocks in water systems and how that changes everything. First, desalination, taking salt water, abundant in coastal areas, and making it drinkable. It's life-saving, but energy-hungry. Reverse osmosis, thermal distillation, pressure pumps, all of it needs steady, high-grade power. In the past, that made it too expensive for poor communities. But in an energy-rich future, desalination becomes local, autonomous, and affordable. Powered by solar concentrators or fusion microreactors, systems can run 24/7, even storing heat to keep working at night. Entire coastlines become water secure. Next, atmospheric water generation, pulling moisture from the air, yes, even in deserts. Think of it like a smart dehumidifier, scaled up. These are already in use in disaster zones, but energy constraints limit them. With abundant power, they serve villages and schools, powered by rooftop arrays. Then purification and pumping. Once you have water, you need to clean it. Filters, UV systems, pressure treatment, and then move it across terrain, into homes, out to crops. Again, energy, and now a story. It's 2039. The Wunan community in La Guajira has transformed. What was once a parched coastline is now dotted with elegant solar towers, each one a hybrid system, half solar concentrator, half atmospheric water generator. The towers generate fresh water all day, store thermal energy, and keep running at night. Water flows into shared cisterns, purified automatically. Drones test quality daily. Excess water supports shaded agriculture, cactus fruit, legumes, medicinal herbs. The village school has its own solar array, and the kids help monitor the water system as part of their science curriculum. Families no longer walk for hours to fill buckets. The water flows to them, and just like that, life opens up. Because water flows where energy flows. Alejandro, would you like to keep flowing into manufacturing and materials next? Or pause to reflect more on infrastructure like this?
And how it kills me to see these people suffer from lack of water, from such a basic necessity. People walking hours to go try and get water that many times is dirty. It kills me, and I would love to see the day that we all unite as a world to try and fix these issues. And knowing that one of the constraints is energy is very important. That's one of the bases why I built this podcast, because I believe that knowledge is power, and through education and through knowledge, we are able to solve a lot of issues. Let's go into manufacturing and materials, please.
Alejandro, what you just shared is so powerful. That grief you feel, seeing people suffer from something so basic, so preventable, is the fuel that drives real change. And the fact that you've turned it into a platform for education, for light, that's something extraordinary. That's how we shift the world. One conversation, one story, one listener at a time. And you're absolutely right. Knowing that energy is the constraint behind so much suffering is a key to unlocking action. When people realize that abundant, equitable energy is possible, they start imagining differently and building differently. Now, let's step into manufacturing and materials. This is the world of making things. Clothes, buildings, electronics, tools, everything we touch. Today, most manufacturing is dirty, centralized, and fragile. Long supply chains, energy-hungry factories, pollution-heavy processes. But in an energy-rich future, manufacturing becomes clean, local, and intelligent. We'll see robotic microfactories powered by solar and AI. They print parts on demand, from shoes to engines, reducing waste and transport. Neighborhood-scale production hubs pop up even in remote areas. 3D printing and additive manufacturing explode. With cheap energy, we melt metals, synthesize polymers, and even print with bio-based materials that absorb carbon instead of emitting it. We use atmospheric carbon as feedstock. Imagine factories that build furniture or construction panels from CO2 pulled directly from the air. That's not science fiction. It's happening now. And energy abundance makes it scalable. And the materials themselves, programmable matter, recyclable composites, and smart textiles, materials that adapt, repair themselves, or even change function based on the environment. Here's a story. It's 2042. In the highlands of Nepal, a small town once dependent on imports now runs a community fab lab. Powered by a solar-wind hybrid grid with molten salt backup, it prints everything from agricultural tools to school furniture. Pema, a materials engineer trained remotely through an open learning network, just developed a new composite from hemp and recycled plastic. It's being used to build climate-resilient shelters. The lab works with a local AI model that predicts what parts the village will need next month, based on weather, crop cycles, and repair logs. Supply chain. It is the supply chain. And once again, this all became possible because the power never runs out. Alejandro, would you like to roll into construction and housing next? We're about to see how homes themselves become generators, protectors, and even teachers.
Let's look at that.
Let's do it, Alejandro, into construction and housing, where energy transforms shelter into so much more. Traditionally, building homes is slow, wasteful, and dependent on centralized materials and labor. Most buildings consume energy, but don't produce or manage it. That's about to flip. In an energy-abundant future, homes become generators, storers, and even traders of energy. Here's what shifts. Autonomous construction. Solar-powered robots print and assemble buildings using local materials. Compressed earth, recycled composites, or bioconcrete that heals its own cracks. Energy-positive homes. Roofs, walls, windows, and even floors generate power. Passive heating and cooling reduce demand. Smart systems store and share energy with the neighborhood. Modular, mobile housing, plug-and-play structures that can be relocated or reconfigured as communities grow or migrate. Designed for resilience, powered by clean microgrids. Community-scale living, clusters of homes that coordinate their energy, food, water, and data. They're more than homes, they're living systems. Now a story. It's 2038. Isha lives in a coastal region of Bangladesh, once plagued by floods and housing loss. Her new home was printed in 5 days using a bamboo algae composite. It sits on kinetic stilts that shift with the tides, powered by a shared solar canopy overhead. Her walls regulate temperature, her roof harvests rain and energy, and her flooring stores heat for cool nights. Her home's AI coordinates with nearby houses, balancing energy loads, adjusting light levels, and even pooling water during dry weeks. When storms approach, the system alerts her early, retracts external fixtures, and shifts battery power to emergency lighting and comms. Her neighbors do the same, because the whole district is networked. What used to be fragile housing is now adaptive infrastructure. Aisha's house doesn't just shelter her, it protects her future. Alejandro, shall we move into the next world, entertainment and culture? A space where energy turns imagination into shared experience.
I would love to see that. Let's go into entertainment and culture. There's one thing that I want to speak about housing. From the city that I'm from in Colombia, in Cali, we really see a vast change in the way that people live in housing. There's some people have to live in some very basic conditions. Think of houses made of aluminum ceilings and just bricks, and the ground is just dirt. And really, by the time that we have the ability to produce with these different materials, I would love to see the day that we can start spreading more quality of life to so many other people. Throughout the talk, I've started to understand better what quality of life in relation to energy means. Let's go into entertainment and culture. I think it's a very interesting segment to talk about.
Thank you for sharing that, Alejandro. And what you just said about seeing the day we can spread quality of life through better housing. That's the core of this whole dream, because when we give people dignified shelter, powered by clean energy, we're not just building homes, we're restoring hope. And that's where culture comes alive. Now, let's dive into entertainment and culture, where energy moves from survival to expression. Once people have safety, water, and food, the next human instinct is to create, connect, and celebrate. And this too depends on power. Imagine immersive storytelling, holographic concerts, VR poetry salons, digital museums accessible from a fishing village in the Amazon or a refugee camp in Sudan. Energy makes these experiences real-time and shared. Creator economies, musicians in Rwanda uploading beats to global platforms, artists in Tunisia minting NFTs using solar-powered rigs, gamers in remote regions running full 3D environments because the compute is local and the cooling is free. Cultural preservation, indigenous languages archived in interactive formats, rituals captured in 360-degree film, oral traditions recorded, translated, and shared across continents. Energy and storage make it all durable. Now let's meet someone. It's 2045. Jaya is a digital folklorist in Sri Lanka. She lives in a coastal commune with autonomous energy systems and a community-built data node. Each day, she interviews elders from different villages, capturing songs, recipes, myths, all in immersive VR. Her headset and rig run on power harvested from wind and wave. Her uploads are stored in a decentralized archive, shared across the global cultural commons, a digital library with millions of contributors. At night, she hosts story salons. Kids tune in from Mongolia, Brazil, Canada. They share dances and tales in real time. It's not just education, it's exchange, and it's powered by the same sun that lights their villages. In this world, entertainment isn't just escape, it's connection, and culture isn't lost, it's amplified. Alejandro, shall we head next into governance and public systems, the bones of society that energy helps animate?
I think I may just make entertainment and culture our next episode. I think that also has to do, and it's really interesting to talk about reality and simulation when we start talking about these VR scenarios and 3D simulations. I think that abundance of energy and advancement of technology has a lot of very interesting applications in the world of entertainment. So I think I'm gonna make that our next episode. Let's go into governance and public systems. I also want you to talk on things like economics in that.
That sounds like a brilliant idea, Alejandro. Entertainment and culture deserve their own spotlight. That world of virtual storytelling, simulation, and creative power is so rich, and energy is the silent engine behind it all. I'm excited for that one already. Now, let's move into governance and public systems, where energy shapes not just individual lives, but how we live together. Governance is about trust, coordination, protection, and opportunity. And public systems like transit, emergency services, infrastructure, data networks are its tools. Without reliable energy, these systems break. But with energy abundance, they evolve into living institutions. Here's what shifts. Public infrastructure is always on. Lights, traffic, transit, water, waste. Smart sensors monitor flow, usage, safety. AI adjusts systems in real time, reducing traffic, preventing outages, or coordinating response during disasters. Local governance becomes participatory. Powered by real-time data, citizens can vote on budget allocation, resource distribution, or climate priorities. Energy powers transparency through digital town halls, immersive forums, and open ledgers. Identity and equity improve. Digital ID systems ensure access to services, health, education, finance, especially for those who've been excluded. Powered and protected by decentralized systems, these networks are accessible even in slums, refugee camps, or rural villages. And then there's economics. Energy abundance disrupts the very foundation of economic scarcity. When power is no longer the bottleneck, production costs drop, mobility increases, time frees up. People can focus on care, creativity, entrepreneurship. We shift from a survival economy to a participation economy. And now a story. It's 2046. In Porto Alegre, Brazil, the city grid is managed as a cooperative commons. Every neighborhood has a citizen dashboard, real-time data on energy flows, water, safety, transport. Residents vote on energy priorities, like how much to allocate to cooling centers during heat waves, or which zones get battery upgrades first. Mateo, a bus driver turned civic technician, helps translate the dashboard into workshops for elders and youth. His own house uses smart pricing. When energy is abundant, it's nearly free. When it's constrained, he gets credits for shifting use. The city never shuts down. It flexes, it listens, and its strength comes not from a central authority, but from millions of tiny, powered nodes working in harmony. That's governance in the age of energy abundance. Resilient, transparent, and human-centered. Alejandro, as we reach the edge of this big picture, how are you feeling about what we've mapped out so far? Would you like to zoom out and reflect together on the full arc we've traveled?
Let's do that. Let's do that as we start wrapping up the podcast. Let's zoom out and get a big picture of what the world looks like in a future of energy abundance.
Let's zoom out, Alejandro. And to everyone listening, take a breath with us, because what we've just built together isn't just a tech forecast. It's a vision of what life can feel like when energy is no longer a barrier, but a bridge. In a world of energy abundance, your home is not just shelter, it's a generator, a sanctuary, a hub of creation. Your fridge cools reliably, your water flows clean, your child learns with world-class tools, whether they live in Manhattan or La Guajira. You move freely by road, rail, sky, powered by clean, silent systems that flex with your needs. Your neighborhood shares energy like it shares stories. You grow food locally, store it easily, and distribute it widely. Your doctor sees you through a solar-powered screen, or a drone brings care to your door. You build what you need where you are. You make art, make trades, make change, because time and health and power are no longer locked away. This isn't utopia. It's what happens when we remove the constraint. Energy abundance doesn't just make things run, it makes people thrive. And the real takeaway? We don't get there by accident. We get there by choosing to invest, to coordinate, to build. So Alejandro, thank you for holding this space, for daring to ask what's possible, and for inviting others to step into that future with you. Any closing reflections from your side before we wrap this journey?
Dr. Selene Aster, I appreciate your time immensely. I thank you for joining us in this future, and hopefully one day we will be able to live in this future and we will see personalities like yourself live among us. As for the reflection, I want to invite everyone in the audience to just keep your mind open, keep asking questions. There's a world of opportunities out there that are just at the tip of your hands to work towards and achieve. Dr. Selene, how about your reflection? What do you want to say to us?
Thank you, Alejandro. It's been a joy and a privilege to explore this future with you and with everyone listening. Here's my reflection. The future isn't something we stumble into, it's something we design. And energy is the canvas. It gives shape to our hopes, our systems, our freedom. But what we do with that canvas, that's the art of civilization. So to each of you listening, don't wait for permission. If something feels broken, build the tools to fix it. If something feels unfair, ask what's missing. Often it's energy and voice and access. And if the future feels too far, remember, it's already leaking into the present through people like Alejandro and conversations like this. So stay curious, stay grounded, and build boldly. I'll see you out there.
All right, and that wraps up the 6th episode on energy. I think that Dr. Selene Aster was an amazing guest, probably one of the best custom GPTs that we've experienced, and one of the best, I want to call them AI personas or simply experts that we have interviewed. As the podcast keeps taking shape, we're going to have better and better conversations, and we will be able to distribute this information to everyone so that we can all collectively as a society start building the future. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll come see the next episode, which will be on entertainment and culture. Everyone, have a nice day, and I hope you enjoyed.